"My name is Helen," she said, her voice low and worn. "I was 13 when I got pregnant after being kicked out of my own home and called a disgrace by the people who were supposed to love me." She paused, eyes heavy with memories that still hurt. "I slept under bridges. I begged for food. I raised a child with nothing but my bare hands and a will to survive. But I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me. I'm here to tell you that no matter how deep the pain, no matter how cruel the world can be, light still finds a way in. And if it found me, it can find you too. But before we begin, one important request: subscribe to the channel. That one click helps stories like this reach those who still need to be heard. And yes, your click truly makes a difference. Now begin. That day started when the plastic stick hit my cheek before I even saw it coming. It bounced off and landed at my feet. I stared at it, that little white thing with 2 angry pink lines. "You filthy little brat!" Mom screamed, standing in the kitchen doorway, eyes blazing, a cigarette burning low between her fingers. "You think I wouldn't find out? You thought you could hide this from us?" Dad's voice roared through our sweltering Georgia living room like a thunderclap. "Don't you dare open your mouth right now. You've embarrassed this family enough." He barked. I couldn't lift my eyes to meet his. My hands were shaking as I clutched the hem of my t-shirt, twisting it tight. I was 13, and the weight of shame wrapped around my shoulders like a wet blanket. "Unbelievable," Mom spat her words dipped in poison. She looked at me like I was nothing. Pregnant, at 13. God, what did I do to deserve a daughter like this? I didn't mean for this to happen. I stammered, my voice cracking as tears welled up and spilled over. Dad slammed his fist against the dining table so hard the salt shaker jumped. "Didn't mean to. You've disgraced this whole family, girl. What do you think folks around here are gonna say? How are we supposed to keep living in this town with people whispering behind our backs?" Mom laughed cold and bitter. "Luis, why even bother arguing? A girl like her doesn't belong here. Let her deal with her choices on her own." "No, please, Mom," I begged, finally looking up. My eyes were swollen and red, but all I saw in hers was ice. "What are you still doing on your knees?" Dad snapped. "Get out. Now." He shot up and pointed to the door like I was nothing but a stray dog. My whole world cracked beneath me. I stepped back shaking. "But I have nowhere to go," I whispered. "I don't know what to do." Tears flooded my eyes as I backed away. "Please, I didn't mean for this to happen. Just listen to me, please. Enough, get out." Dad's hand flew out and struck me across the face. My cheek burned and I stumbled backward, hitting the corner of the counter. "Dad, please," I heard myself say, but it didn't matter. His hand came down again, open palm across my face this time. Mom joined in, grabbing my arm and shoving me toward the living room. "You want to act like a grown woman? Then live with grown-up consequences." Outside, I could see people gathering. Neighbors peeking through blinds, whispering behind hands. Their stares pierced my back like invisible knives. "Go on," Dad shouted again, impatient now. "Please," I cried. "Don't do this. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Please just help me." But they weren't listening. Dad's voice dropped low and final. "You are not our daughter anymore." That's when I knew whatever I had once called home had vanished for good. Dad's hand closed around my arm like a vice. "You want to spread your legs," he hissed, dragging me to the front door. "Then go live like one." "Please, Dad," I cried, slipping on the tile as he yanked the door open. Mom was behind us, her voice a dagger in my back. "Don't come crawling back here when the world chews you up, because we won't be waiting. You hear me?" Dad growled in my ear, pushing me outside into the freezing rain. "You step foot on this porch again, and I'll throw you into the street like the damn stray you are." Then he slammed the door, just like that. I stood there in a storm that felt colder than death, clutching my stomach and shaking so bad I could barely breathe. But it wasn't the rain that hurt most. It was the stairs. Mrs. Henderson next door peeked out through her blinds. I heard her gasp. "She's the pregnant one," someone muttered. "She's only 13, said another, almost gleeful. Trash. Raised by trash." A man across the street lit a cigarette and stared like I was some stray animal crawling out of a gutter. "That's what happens when you let girls run wild," a woman hissed, loud enough for me to hear. Fingers pointed, voices piled up like a crowd of knives. She should be ashamed. Look at her. Who's the father? Bet she doesn't even know. Disgusting. I couldn't take it. I couldn't breathe. My bare feet slapped against the pavement as I ran, tears mixing with rain, every cruel word chasing me like a pack of wolves. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to disappear before the whole world swallowed me whole. So I ran. The rain came fast, cold, and heavy, mixing with the tears on my cheeks. My sneakers soaked through in minutes as I stumbled along the wet roadside mud clinging to my ankles. I didn't know where I was headed, just anywhere but there. I spotted a rundown porch and made for it, desperate for shelter. But a gruff, middle-aged man stepped in my path. His face was hard, unreadable. "Move along, kid," he growled. "Please." I whimpered, "just for a night." "Not my problem," he muttered, slamming the door in my face. I ended up in a nearby park. The stone benches were freezing. I curled up on one, wrapping my arms around my belly like I could somehow protect the tiny heartbeat inside me. "Hey girl, hold up." A coarse voice cut through the downpour. I turned, heart thudding. 3 figures stepped out of the shadows, laughing like it was a game. "What's a pretty thing like you doing out here alone?" one of them said, his grin crooked and mean. "We just want to have a little fun," another chimed in, stepping closer. I didn't answer. I just took a step back. Then another. "Don't run. We'll find you," they warned. But I bolted. I ran like my life depended on it, because it did. My feet slipped on the soaked pavement, my lungs burned, but I didn't stop. I turned down a narrow alley, heart hammering, and somehow lost them. I collapsed behind a dumpster, trembling so hard my teeth clattered. Why, I whispered to the dark. Why does everyone hate me? I passed out beneath a tree in that same park. The storm still roared overhead, waking me with a crash of thunder. My body felt frozen, my lips numb, my head burning with fever. I'm gonna die here, I thought. The rain kept falling. My breath came shallow. Everything blurred. Then, "Sweetheart, what are you doing out here?" The voice was old but kind. Through my haze, I saw a woman bending over me, shielding us both with a giant red umbrella. My voice wouldn't come. I collapsed into her arms. "Don't be afraid," she whispered. "I've got you." Who are you?" I asked, barely conscious. "Just an old baker," she said. "But you can't stay out here like this." Her name was Rosalind. And that night, under the pounding rain, she carried me to her little corner bakery and changed everything. The little bakery smelled like heaven, warm bread, butter, cinnamon. "Sit down here, honey. I'll get you something warm to drink," she said gently, guiding me to an old wooden chair near the back. Her hands were soft but trembling as she patted a towel over my dripping shoulders. I sat there, too tired to cry anymore, shaking from cold and fear. The next morning, I woke up in the same chair, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like flower and lavender. My head was still foggy from the fever, and my limbs felt like they belonged to someone else. But the scent of fresh-baked bread hit me like a memory of life before everything went wrong. My stomach growled loud enough to embarrass me. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. "You're up," Rosalind said, setting down a warm glass of milk and a soft roll on the little table in front of me. Her eyes studied me, thin, pale, scared out of my skin. "Go on, eat something." "Thank you," I whispered. My voice was hoarse, and I still didn't quite trust this stranger, even if she seemed like the only person in the world who didn't want me gone. "You don't have to tell me anything," she said. "Whatever happened, it's clear you need a place to rest. So eat, and we'll talk later." I picked up the roll, hands trembling, but the moment I brought it to my lips, I saw my father's face again, red with rage. I felt my mother's slap echo down my spine. Their words came back in full force. "You're disgusting. You're nothing. You ruined us." I put the bread down and looked away as tears rolled down my cheeks. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Rosalind sat beside me, her voice soft. "I don't deserve this," I sobbed. "I'm the shame of my family." She was quiet for a moment, then took my trembling hands into hers. "Listen to me, baby girl. Nobody deserves to be treated the way you were. I don't know your whole story, but I can see you're not a bad kid. You deserve to live. You hear me? You deserve to live." In the days that followed, I started helping around the bakery, cleaning trays, wiping tables, folding parchment paper, little things, nothing too heavy. But even behind the counter, I felt the stares. I felt them whispering. "Who is she?" asked one lady with a fake smile and judgment in her eyes. "She looks like trouble." "You sure it's wise to have her here?" Rosalind didn't flinch. "What I do in my bakery is my business," she replied flatly. "If you don't like it, there's the door. But don't you dare judge a child you don't even know." But not everyone was like Rosalind. One afternoon, while I was wiping down tables, a man walked in wearing a thick coat and a frown that looked permanent. It was Mr. Everett from the corner grocery store, the kind of man who thrived on gossip and thought he owned the whole damn town. "Rosalind, we need to talk," he said, eyes flicking straight to me. "Do you even know who this girl is?" He pointed at me like I was a stain, thrown out for messing around with her own stepdad. "You keep her here and you're going to lose your good name." My hands froze. I stared at the table, willing myself not to cry. But his words sliced right through me. Rosalind didn't hesitate. "Everett, if you've got nothing better to do than bully a child, I suggest you find the exit." He scowled. "I'm just saying she's bad for business." She pointed at the door. "Out, and don't come back." But the damage had been done. The gossip spread like wildfire. "That pregnant girl's living in the bakery," they said. People stared longer, whispered louder. One night while I was taking out the trash, a group of local boys circled me in the alley behind the shop. "Well, well," Carlos sneered, stepping closer. "Heard you slept with your stepdad for $10. I got 10 right here. What do I get?" "I'm not trying to bother anyone," I said quietly, backing up. "I just want peace. Peace." He laughed, then shoved me hard. "You already ruined that when you got knocked up." Before I could hit the ground, I heard a voice cut through the dark. "Enough." Rosalind stood there in her apron fists, clenched eyes blazing. She rushed over and helped me to my feet. "If you ever come near her again," she said, "you'll regret it." Carlos smirked. "We'll see how long you keep your precious bakery when the whole town turns on you." That night, Rosalind held me while I cried in the back room, her hands shaking with rage. "Don't listen to them," she whispered. "You haven't done anything wrong." But I couldn't believe her. Not completely. Not with the way everyone looked at me like I was some disease. The shame was heavier than my own body. Things got worse. Rosalind had to shut the bakery for a few days. Too many people were talking. Too many refused to come in. I tried to help. I walked to every diner, gas station, and small business on Main Street asking for work. "I'll do anything," I begged one restaurant owner. He looked down at my belly and sneered. "We're not hiring. Please," I whispered, "just give me a chance." He shook his head. I walked away, stomach hollow, heart shattered, wondering how long I could keep surviving in a world that had already made up its mind about me. I started to feel like a shadow drifting from place to place, never welcome, never seen. One afternoon, as I pushed open the back door of the bakery, I found Rosalind hunched over a stack of bills at the kitchen counter, rubbing her temples like they were full of lead. "You okay?" I asked gently. She sighed, her voice low and tired. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this bakery going, sweetheart. Folks are threatening to stop coming in if you stay here. I'll leave," I said quickly, my throat tight. "I don't want you getting hurt because of me." She looked up at me, then pain in her eyes that cut deeper than 1,000 words. "Don't be ridiculous. You've got nowhere to go. I won't let you end up on the streets again," but inside I'd already made up my mind. I couldn't let her lose everything just because she had a heart. The next morning, after barely sleeping, I watched Rosalind kneading dough with tired hands. She moved slowly, her age more visible in the early light. I felt so much gratitude, it made my chest ache, but the guilt was louder. "I'm going to look for work," I told her softly. "You've done enough. I don't want to be a burden anymore." Rosalind didn't stop kneading. "I told you before, Helen, you're not a burden. This is your home now, and you're not going anywhere." Her voice was firm, but I could hear the strain behind it. Still, I slipped out mid-morning and walked the neighborhood, knocking on every storefront. My palms were sweaty, and my heart dropped lower each time I heard the same answer. "Looking for work," scoffed Carmen, the seamstress down the block when I stepped into her shop. "That's a good one." Her eyes scanned my belly with disgust. "We don't hire girls like you. Best get out before you bring your drama into my store." I pressed my lips together, nodded, and walked out without a word. Each door slammed felt heavier than the last. The world didn't want me. I was poison to everyone I touched. That afternoon, as I made my way back to the bakery, clutching a handful of coins I'd earned handing out flyers, I heard shouting from the farmer's market up ahead. "She stole my purse," screamed an older woman, pointing straight at me. "That pregnant girl, that's her." People turned. Heads swiveled. A wave of suspicion swept through the crowd. "No, I didn't take anything," I cried, panic rising in my throat. "I swear I didn't." Two men stepped in front of me, blocking the path like prison bars. "Check her bag," one of them said, voice cold. "No, please don't." I clutched my bag tight, but they snatched it away and tore it open. My fingers trembled, my legs felt like air. Nothing. Just a few flyers, my last dollar, and a crushed granola bar. The woman who'd accused me faltered. Well, maybe she hid it somewhere else. Someone like her isn't trustworthy. I stood frozen, humiliated, shaking with anger and fear as murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. "She looks like trouble. Probably did it before. You know her kind. Get out of here before we call the cops," the woman barked. I didn't wait. I ran, sobbing, the shame sticking to my skin like sweat. How could people hate me this much? Just because I was different, because I was carrying a child. When I burst into the bakery, Rosalind was waiting. She rushed to me, eyes full of worry. "What happened? Why are you crying?" I collapsed in her arms, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. "I didn't do anything," I gasped. "But they hate me. They treat me like trash. I can't take it anymore." She stroked my hair, whispering, "You poor child. You have to be strong. Don't let them break you." But I just shook my head. I didn't feel strong. I felt broken, tired of fighting, tired of surviving. The next day, Rosalind left early to meet with the landlord about the overdue rent. I stayed behind, trying to keep myself busy in the shop, even though my hands kept trembling. Carlos had been threatening me for days, and the thought of him lingered like a storm cloud. While I was wiping down the tables, the front door slammed open. Carlos and two of his friends swaggered in, all grins and menace. "Well, look who's holding down the fort," Carlos said with a smirk. "How's business today, baby mama?" "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, nothing much," he said, circling the counter. "Heard the old lady's out. That true?" He looked around with mock surprise. "Looks like you're all alone. Please leave," I said, my voice cracking. "This isn't a place for trouble." Carlos laughed. Trouble. We're just here to help. He stepped closer, voice lowering to something uglier. Tell me you really think that baby's gonna have a good life with a mother like you. I backed away, clutching my belly, instinct kicking in fast. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. His smile didn't fade, but I saw the shadow behind his eyes, and in that moment, I knew I had to survive, no matter what. Oh, go ahead and call them, Carlos said with a mocking grin. But let's be real. Who's gonna believe a girl like you? No home, no family, nothing but a big mistake growing inside you. I couldn't say a word. My body was frozen with fear and rage. Just then a voice I knew all too well cracked through the air like thunder. Get out of here right now. Rosalind stood in the doorway, gripping a broom in her weathered hands, her eyes fierce and unwavering. Carlos laughed slow and sarcastic. Fine, we'll go, but don't forget this lady. Your bakery. It won't be left in peace. They left, but the threat lingered like smoke in the air. Afterward, Rosalind sat beside me, her face full of quiet pain. I just lowered my head, wrapped my arms around my stomach, and whispered, I don't know how to keep going. She looked at me, eyes stern but kind. You have to, Helen, not just for yourself, for that baby. You don't let people like them win. But deep down it felt like the ground was already crumbling under me. I didn't know how much more I could take. That night I woke up drenched in sweat, haunted by nightmares I couldn't shake. The little bakery, once a safe haven, now felt like paper walls against a world that hated me. Even the smell of rising dough couldn't drown out the voices and the stares. Stay in today, Rosalind said softly, as she kneaded bread at dawn. Get some rest. She'd noticed me withdrawing, shrinking the fear, never leaving my eyes. I can't just sit around, Grandma, I whispered, fiddling with a dish towel. I have to help somehow. Truth was, I was terrified of stepping back into a world that kept trying to spit me out. Don't be silly, she said gently but firmly. You need to take care of yourself first. But I was already slipping on my shoes. That afternoon, I went out to buy a few things we needed. That's when I ran into Isabel, the market vegetable vendor known for her sharp tongue and sharper eyes. Well, look who's still slinking around, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. I just need a few vegetables, I murmured, not meeting her eyes. You still have the nerve to show your face here, she sneered. I thought you were long gone. The crowd around her started turning toward me, their gazes cutting deeper than knives. I don't want trouble. I just need a few things, I said quietly, taking a step back. Trouble, Isabel snapped. You think you're not already the problem. Walking around with that belly, bringing shame to the whole neighborhood. Her voice made others nod in agreement. Please don't say that, I pleaded. I just want to live in peace. Peace girls like you don't get peace, Isabel barked. You act like an adult, you pay the price like one. We all have to live with the embarrassment of what you are. Laughter rippled through the crowd. I couldn't take it. I turned and ran, heart pounding, her words sticking to me like grease I couldn't scrub off. That night I was cleaning the bakery when the door burst open. 3 men stormed in. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized Carlos. Where's the old lady? He demanded, eyes scanning the room. She's not here, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. Carlos grinned. Good. Then it's just you and us. He stepped closer, eyes dark. You really think you can hide here like it's all fine? We told you this town doesn't want you. Please, I begged. I'm just trying to work. I'm not trying to cause any problems. You are the problem, Carlos barked. Since you showed up, people stopped coming. We lost business, all because of you. He slammed his fist against the table, and I jumped back. The other two guys began sweeping their arms across the counters, knocking trays to the floor. Loaves of bread hit the tiles. Flour flew everywhere. Eggs cracked. "Please stop," I cried, tears running down my cheeks. "Don't do this." But Carlos just laughed. "This is your warning. Get out before it gets worse." Then they walked out, leaving the shop in ruins. I collapsed to my knees, my hands shaking as I tried to gather what I could from the mess, wiping my tears with flour-dusted sleeves. When Rosalind came back, she froze in the doorway, horrified. "What happened here?" she asked. I looked up, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't stay here anymore, Grandma. I only bring you trouble." That's what I whispered, and yet Rosalind placed both hands on my shoulders, her eyes burning with the kind of determination that could quiet a storm. "You're not going anywhere. We'll face this together." But deep inside, I could see it. She was getting more tired by the day. And the worst part was knowing I was the reason. 2 days later, she got the letter from the landlord. A final warning: pay the back rent in a week or lose the bakery. She tried to hide the fear in her face, but I noticed. I always noticed. "I should go, Grandma," I said, tears swelling at the edge of my eyes. "Maybe if I'm not here, people will stop coming after you." "Don't say that," she snapped. "I told you already, this is your home." But I knew what I had brought into her life: whispers, threats, empty shelves. That night, as the town slept and the bakery lights dimmed, I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling with a chest full of ache. "I have to go," I said to the quiet for her, "for Amy." I pressed my hand to my belly. I felt her move. "I'm sorry, Amy, but we can't stay here forever." Before the sun rose, I packed the few things I owned into a torn duffel bag. Rosalind was still sleeping, curled beneath her quilt in the corner. I stood there for a moment, memorizing the lines on her tired face, the scent of bread still clinging to the walls. Then I left a note on the kitchen table. "Dear Miss Rosalind, I am so thankful for all you've done for me, but I can't stay here and be your burden. I'm going to find somewhere else, and I hope this gives you some peace. I love you. Helen." I placed my hand on my stomach again. "Amy, we have to be strong now. It's just us." I closed the door behind me, and the silence that followed nearly broke me. I wandered for miles until I found a rundown motel on the edge of town, one of those places where no one asks questions. I could only afford a few nights. "Room 3, the woman behind the counter said, tossing me a key like I was a stray dog. Her name was Dolores. Middle-aged, bitter eyes like ice. "Don't bother me if you can't pay." The room was small, damp, with stained wallpaper and a creaky bed. I sat on the mattress, hugging my belly, trying not to cry, as I remembered the smell of warm bread and the way Rosalind hummed when she baked. But now, it was just me and Amy. "We'll be okay," I whispered. I didn't believe it, not even a little. The first day I hit the streets again, asking for work. I was turned down everywhere. "We're not hiring. You're too young. We don't need drama." I'd heard them all before, but they still hurt. I knew what they really saw: my swollen stomach, my lack of a ring, my shame walking on 2 feet. When I got back, there were a bunch of kids outside my room. They were pointing at me, laughing like it was sport. "Look at her belly. Looks like it's gonna pop." One of them shouted, "She must have done something really bad if her family kicked her out." Another said, smirking, "Stop it. You shouldn't say things like that." I tried, but the more I spoke, the louder they laughed. That night, I curled up on the motel bed, arms wrapped around my belly, whispering to Amy like I could block out the voices. But they echoed in my head like broken glass. The next morning, I tried to slip out early. But when I opened the door, Dolores was already standing there, arms crossed, voice sharp. "You stole from me, didn't you?" I blinked. "What?" "Don't play dumb. I'm missing money from my drawer. Started right after you checked in." "I didn't take anything," I said, stepping back. My voice shook. "I'd never steal." "You expect me to believe that?" she barked. Don't give me excuses. You've got 24 hours to pay me what's missing or get out. I don't keep thieves in my house." Her shouting brought others out of their rooms. I saw faces in doorways whispering, judging. I lowered my head as the tears slipped past my cheeks. That night, I came back to find the door to my room wide open. My heart dropped. Inside, everything was torn apart, clothes thrown everywhere. My small stash of money gone. "Is someone here?" I called out, my voice a thin thread of fear. Silence. Just mess and emptiness. "No," I whispered, falling to my knees. "This can't be happening." I ran to find Dolores. I had nothing else to lose. Before I could say a word, Dolores cut me off. "You again," she snapped. "Don't go pointing fingers. If something went missing, it's on you." Her voice hit like a slap. I couldn't even defend myself. There were no words left, just silence and shame. I walked back to my room like I was sleepwalking. No one believed me. No one ever had. I curled up on the thin mattress, wrapping my arms around my belly as the tears came again. "I'm sorry, Amy," I whispered. "I can't protect you. I don't know where we'll go now. What are we even going to do?" But no one answered, just the whistle of the wind sneaking through the cracks in the door, like the world itself was reminding me I was completely and utterly alone. The next morning, I packed what little I had into my old duffel. My hand shook as I handed the key to Dolores. She didn't even look at me, just jerked her chin toward the exit like I was something she needed out of her way. I kept my head down as I walked out the cold stares of the other tenants burning into my back like invisible torches. I wandered the streets I used to know, but every corner now felt foreign, like the whole town had turned its face away from me. With an empty stomach and legs that barely moved, I leaned against the side of an old brick building, gasping through the ache in my ribs. A bitter wind pushed through my jacket and made my teeth chatter. I ended up near an old marketplace, where once upon a time someone kind had slipped me a bag of day-old rolls. I stood still watching the vendors under their awnings, the smell of fresh bread cutting through my hunger like a blade. I walked up to one of the stands, forcing myself to speak. "Excuse me," I said, my throat raw. "Do you have any food you're not using?" The woman behind the counter gave me a look that could freeze blood. "Not for you," she said. "Try somewhere else." I nodded, whispering a thank you, even though my cheeks burned with shame. I walked away with my eyes on the ground, not wanting to meet anyone's gaze. In a small public park, I found an empty bench and sat down. I hugged my belly again. The tears came without warning, quiet and bitter. "I'm sorry, Amy," I whispered. "What did we ever do to deserve this?" A group of kids ran by, their laughter ringing through the air. One of them stopped and pointed right at me. "Look, she's huge like a balloon," he shouted. The others roared with laughter. Another boy threw a small stone that hit the bench beside me. I didn't flinch. I just kept my head down, letting the tears fall. I was tired of fighting, tired of being hated for breathing. As night fell, I kept walking until my legs gave up, and I collapsed into a space between two crumbling buildings. I curled up against the wall and tried to close my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. My stomach growled with hunger. The wind screamed through broken windows and cracks in the bricks, whispering that the world had forgotten I existed. Just when I thought I couldn't feel any lower, I heard footsteps. At first, I thought it was nothing, just someone passing by. But the steps stopped right in front of me. "Helen." I looked up slowly. My eyes were swollen from crying. There she was, Miss Rosalind, her face tight with worry, holding an old flashlight and a faded umbrella. "Miss Rosalind," I choked out, stunned. "You foolish child," she whispered, kneeling down, her hands trembling as they touched my face. "I've been looking everywhere for you. You scared me half to death. I didn't want to be a burden anymore, I cried, breaking down. She pulled me into her arms so tightly, it felt like she could glue my broken pieces back together. You still don't get it, she said. You're family to me now. I will never leave you alone. We held each other in the freezing dark, my sobs mixing with the sound of drizzle hitting the sidewalk. We were both shaking, but in her arms, I felt a warmth I thought I had lost forever. I told you, Helen, she said, voice cracking. You don't have to be afraid. We'll get through anything together. I looked at her through red, wet eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I left without saying anything. Don't say another word, she said. All that matters is you're safe now. She pulled me even closer, her hands still shaking but full of love. The next morning we walked back together to the little bakery. The trouble hadn't vanished, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a home. Rosalind wiped the counter, gently brushing away the dust that had settled. I stood beside her and helped with the dough, my hands still clumsy but slowly learning the rhythm of daily life. I'm going to help you with everything, and soon everything's going to be okay. I said, a flicker of hope finally showing in my voice. For the first time in days, Rosalind smiled an honest, weary smile that softened her whole face. That's right, Helen. Everything will be okay. As long as we're together, nothing can break us. And over time, even though the neighbors still whispered behind our backs and gave us those sideways glances, I learned to block them out. I stayed focused on my work, on preparing for Amy, the little life growing inside me. The smell of fresh bread began to wrap around the block again, and one by one, the regulars returned. I worked the counter with a quiet sense of pride, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed there might actually be a future worth building. Thank you, Miss Rosalind, I said one morning, looking at the woman who had become my anchor. I wouldn't have survived any of this without you. She gave my hand a gentle squeeze, her eyes filled with something deeper than kindness. Your family, Helen, family sticks no matter what. And under that little roof with the oven always warm and the front door always creaking open, we built a quiet life. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. 13 years passed since the night I was thrown out with nothing but fear in my chest and a baby in my womb. Now I was a woman. I was steady, capable, and somehow free. With Rosalind's help, I had opened my own little cafe just outside of town, nestled near the highway, where the smell of coffee pulled in truckers, teachers, and tired parents alike. I named it Amy after my daughter, the brightest part of my life. She was 13 now, all confidence and spark, with my same eyes, but none of my fear. She helped behind the counter, always eager, always smiling. Our life was simple, but it was full. One morning while I wiped down the bar, the bell over the door rang. In walked Miss Julia, one of Rosalind's oldest friends, holding a worn envelope and humming like she always did. Helen, look what I found while cleaning out my attic, she beamed, spreading out a stack of old photos on the counter. Look how beautiful Rosalind was when she was young. I leaned in and my heart swelled. She was the best person I've ever known. If it weren't for her, Amy and I wouldn't be here today. Amy came rushing over, curiosity shining in her eyes. Mom, is this Miss Rosalind? I've never seen a picture of her that young. I smiled, brushing her hair back. Yes, baby. She did a lot for me, and for you too. Just as I was speaking, the bell over the door chimed again. I looked up and froze. An older woman stood in the doorway, thin, frail, with hair like snow and deep lines etched into her face. Her eyes were tired, uncertain, but familiar, in a way I couldn't shake. Isabel, I whispered. My voice cracked. The woman nodded, tears already slipping from her eyes. Yes, Helen, it's me. I'm your mother. The cafe went quiet. Julia stepped back, sensing the weight in the air. Amy looked between us, confused but curious. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice suddenly cold. It's been 13 years. You think you can just walk back into my life like none of it ever happened? She dropped her gaze. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know I don't deserve to be here, but I can't live with the guilt anymore. I came to ask for your forgiveness. I let out a bitter laugh, but my eyes were already welling with tears. You threw me out like I was nothing. You picked your precious reputation over your own daughter, and now you want forgiveness. You think words can undo that? Amy tugged gently at my sleeve, her eyes wide and searching. Mom, what's going on? Who is she? My hands curled into fists at my sides, my knuckles turning white. Amy, I said slowly, she's your grandmother. Amy turned stunned. Really? Your mom's mom? Isabel fell to her knees, crying openly now. Yes, sweetheart, I'm your grandma, and I made a terrible mistake. I abandoned your mom when she needed me most, and I've regretted it every day since. Amy stepped back, looking up at me with 1,000 questions in her eyes. Is it true, Mom? Why would she leave you? I bent down and held her close. I'll explain everything, baby. Just not right now. Isabel stood up slowly, her hands trembling. Helen, I'm not asking for a second chance right away. I just want the chance to make it right, even if it takes the rest of my life. I looked at her, the pain still fresh in my chest after all these years. It won't be that simple. I said, my voice low but steady. 13 years isn't a short stretch of time. I had to build my life from nothing. You weren't there when I needed you most. And now, I don't know if there's anything you could say that would make a difference. Julia, who had been quietly watching from the corner, stepped forward and placed a warm hand on my shoulder. Helen, she said gently, your mother made a terrible mistake, there's no denying that. But sometimes forgiveness isn't something we give for the other person. Sometimes it's what we do to free ourselves. I looked from Julia to the woman standing in front of me, Isabel, and the storm inside me churned harder. I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. Anger, pain, a deep ache that cracked me open from the inside. Suddenly, Amy spoke, her voice steady and clear despite the heaviness in the room. Ma'am, she said, looking right at Isabel. I don't know what you did, but if you're really sorry, you should show it, not just say it. Isabel's eyes lit up just barely, like a flicker of hope she didn't expect. You're right, she whispered. I'll do anything to make things right. She dropped to her knees, reaching for my hands, clutching them with shaking fingers. I've lived with regret every day for 13 years, she sobbed. After you left, your father got sick. He never forgave himself for what happened, but he was too proud to say it. And now, he's gone. My breath caught in my chest. Dad died. My voice cracked like dry wood. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why now? Isabel squeezed my hands tighter. I was scared you'd never forgive me. But when he passed, I realized I couldn't lose you too. She looked up at me, her face hollowed by years of remorse. You're all I have left, Helen. I pulled my hands away and stepped back, the weight of it all pressing on my chest. All you have left. That's what this is about. He threw me out like I was garbage. And you stood there. You watched me go. I raised my daughter alone. I worked. I fought. I suffered. And now you're here because you're lonely. Isabel didn't answer. She just stayed on her knees, her shoulders shaking, tears pouring down her face. Amy stood beside me, her expression full of something I couldn't quite name. Grief, confusion, maybe a little hope. Mom, she whispered, her voice barely holding steady. I don't know everything, but I think maybe she really wants to fix it. Just then the cafe door opened. Rosalind stepped inside, and when she saw what was happening, she didn't say a word at first. She walked over calmly, gently resting her hand on my shoulder. "Helen," she said in a voice as steady as stone, "I think you should hear her out." I shook my head, the tears finally spilling over. How am I supposed to forgive her, Grandma? She threw me into hell, and now she wants me to forget like none of it ever happened. I buried my face in Rosalind's chest, trying to breathe through the pain. She held me firm but tender. "Forgiving someone doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen," she said softly. "Forgiveness means you're no longer carrying the weight of their choices. Sometimes the biggest gift you can give is to yourself." Isabel stayed on the ground, her voice no more than a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive me right now, but please, let me try. I can't change the past, but I want to be here now. I want to do better." My head dropped, the emotions swirling too fast to name. "I need time," I murmured. Rosalind nodded. "Of course, Helen. No one's rushing you. But remember, even the most broken family can find its way back." Isabel stood slowly, her eyes red, but still glowing with a fragile kind of hope. "Thank you, Helen. If you give me a chance, I'll prove to you this time is different." I didn't say anything, but I didn't push her away. In the weeks that followed, I kept my distance. I didn't invite her in, but I didn't shut the door either. She began showing up at the cafe, always sitting in the same corner, quietly watching as Amy and I worked. When Amy laughed, I'd catch Isabel smiling behind her coffee cup eyes full of regret and something softer. One afternoon, Amy slid her hand into mine. Her eyes were bright, her voice steady. "Mom, I think Grandma really is sorry. Please, maybe give her a chance. I don't want to see you hurting forever." I looked at her, and in that moment, something inside me began to shift. My daughter was my reason for everything. If this could bring her peace, maybe I could try. Rosalind helped ease things along. She'd invite Isabel to stay for dinner or linger for coffee after closing. One evening, while I was wiping down the espresso machine, I heard Isabel speaking softly to Rosalind. "I know I hurt Helen deeply, but I'm not giving up. She's my daughter, and I will spend the rest of my life proving how much I love her." And weeks later, I finally sat down at the table across from her, ready to talk, ready to try. The conversation took place in the quiet warmth of our cafe's tiny kitchen, long after closing, when Amy was already asleep, and Rosalind had quietly given us the space we needed. "Mom," I began, my voice still edged with distance, though not as sharp as it used to be. "I need to know why. Why did you turn your back on me when I needed you most?" She lowered her gaze, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I was scared, Helen," she said, her voice trembling. "Your father and I were so afraid of what people would say. We spent our lives guarding the family's reputation, and when you came to us with all of it, we just didn't know how to face it. But we were wrong. So wrong." I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. "After you left, your father stopped smiling. He carried that regret until the end, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. He used to sit by the window for hours, just staring out like maybe you'd come back someday. Then why didn't you come looking for me?" I asked, my voice unsteady. "He thought you'd never forgive him," she said softly. And honestly, I believed the same. But after he passed, I realized I couldn't live with the silence anymore. I couldn't bear to lose you too. Tears streaked down her cheeks as she looked up at me. I sat there, the weight of her words pressing against the years I tried to bury. I remembered the rain-soaked nights, the way loneliness sat beside me like a shadow, and no one ever came. I remembered surviving, alone. But I also knew I couldn't undo the past. "Mom," I finally said, my voice breaking, "I can't forget what happened, I don't think I ever will. But for Amy, for Rosalind, and for myself, I'll try to forgive." She burst into tears and pulled me into her arms. "Thank you, Helen. I won't let you down." From that moment on, she started coming by the cafe more often, helping out where she could, mopping the floor, washing dishes, learning to bake. It wasn't perfect. There were still days where I kept her at arm's length, where the silence between us felt louder than words. But little by little, we began to rebuild. Amy, with her wide smile and curious questions, became the bridge between us. She had this way of softening everything. A few months later, on a beautiful spring morning, we hosted a small event at Cafe Amy to thank the community for their support. Rosalind, Isabel, Amy, and I stood side by side, our faces bright with gratitude and peace. When it came time to speak, I stepped forward and looked out at the familiar faces. "Life doesn't always go the way we plan," I said. "There were times I didn't think I'd survive it. But if you don't give up, if you keep going, you'll always find something to hold on to." I'm grateful to Miss Rosalind, who pulled me out of the darkest place I've ever known. And I'm thankful to my mother for showing up and fighting for a second chance. Isabel took my hand. Then her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so proud of you, Helen," she whispered. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known." The morning ended with laughter and hugs, the kind that linger even after everyone's gone. Under the roof of our little cafe, the four of us found something rare, not perfection, but something even better, a messy, imperfect family built on grace. My story isn't just about survival. It's about the power of forgiveness, the kind that doesn't excuse the past, but makes room for a better future. To forgive isn't just to free someone else. It's to unchain your own soul. And in a world that so often feels cold and cruel, people like Rosalind remind us that a single act of kindness can light up the darkest corners of our lives. Life will never be flawless, but love, when it's real and steady, can heal even the deepest scars. Remember, even in your darkest hour, there's always a light waiting at the end. And now, if you're still here, let me say this not as a storyteller, but as someone who's watched too many lives break in silence. If you're a parent watching this, love your children, not just when they're perfect, not just when they fit the mold, but when they're scared, when they make mistakes, when they need you most, because the world out there, it's cruel. And if they can't count on you, who will they count on? And to those who've been kicked, judged, forgotten like Helen, like so many others, stand back up. Speak your truth. You don't owe silence to anyone who tried to bury you. What you owe is love to yourself and a future that begins again today. This story, it may be fiction, but the pain, the shame, the injustice, it's real, and it's happening to someone right now. So if this touched you, share your thoughts below. Leave a comment, because every voice raised in compassion helps push back against the silence. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, not just for us, but for every voice still waiting to be heard. You're not alone, not anymore.